Subscribe Squad, it is another day, it's another dollar, and it's time for another freaking interview. You guys have asked for it. I've actually got several requests for this particular interview, and today we have a guest. He's super duper talented. You know, his name rhymes with Jesus, but it's not, so make some noise for our boy Mesus. Mesus, say what's up to the people real quick.
Hello, everybody in the building and interweb net vision world.
Thank you so much for joining us today. See, this is what we call a quarantine interview, you know, life in the
Plugging my sponsorship.
Oh, yeah. Which?
It's good.
Shout out to the sandwich shop. And so, you know, I just actually discovered your music. Funny story, I was doing an interview myself as an artist on Main Man's channel, and he had told me about you, and he was like, you guys would actually make a dope song together. And so that's what I was like, okay, I'm gonna check out this person's music. Then I was like, all right, you just dropped this new video. So then I reacted to the new video you dropped. I was like, this person is really dope. I would totally love to make a song with him. We ended up linking up, exchanging numbers or whatever, got on the phone, and hopefully we'll be working on some new music soon. But I was like, we have to get an interview done because I feel like it'd be a great way for us to get to know each other better as artists. And then from there, it's going to be even easier to make music together. So here we are now, and so I need to start kind of like from the beginning. So I always start with artists that I interview is, when did you fall in love with music?
Oh, wow. I guess I fell in love with music when I was young, probably 8, 9 years old is when I like really started listening to hip hop and rap. And then I started rapping myself when I was about 13. And, yeah. Like the first song I ever wrote, I was 16. It was a poem. I was really depressed. I was like suicidal, and I grabbed a Sharpie on the side of my bed and just scribbled until I didn't want to kill myself anymore. That was the first song I ever wrote. It's called Seed.
That's the power of music right there, though. Like, I feel like music is such a great form of expression. How did you come up with the name Mesus?
Long, very, very long process. I used to go by, I'm a believer in Jesus. And so it's a spin on that to say that I want people to see Jesus in me, hence Mesus. But it grew and morphed from many different names that I went by prior, and it just kind of finally happened that that's the name I stuck with.
Okay. I feel like, you know, I hate that people always want to constantly put us in a box as far as artists. And what genre would you consider yourself in if you had one, or subgenre would you consider yourself in? Or do you feel like you're a blend of everything?
Hip hop. I'm a hip hop artist. You know, I mean, that's my bread and butter, I guess. I can do things outside of that box, like you said, but I'm a hip hop artist.
And where are you from originally?
I'm from Will County, Illinois, which is about 30 minutes south of Chicago. That was my videographer, Scott. We're sitting down to lunch. We just got done scouting a video shoot. So, but yeah, we grew up in the South Burbs of Chicago.
Okay.
Will County.
And what was that like? Like, how do you feel like that influenced your music?
It was very heavily influenced by. It's like a melting pot where I grew up. So it's kind of cool because you got to see a very diverse. Like culture where I grew up. I was talking to someone about this song I just recently put out, and there's been a lot of talk about race and things like that. And you know, I seen a statistic that African Americans make up like 13% of the culture, and that number like blew my mind because where I'm from, it's like 30. It's like a third, you know, of the culture. It's a much. And I was very surprised by that number. I was like, I would have never guessed that. Because it's just where I'm from, it's a very mixed culture. So, which is, I think, a beautiful thing because you get to learn so much about everybody and their different, how everybody lived. Everybody's got kind of different different cool things that we all bring to the table. I think it's, you know, I'm blessed to have been brought up where I grew up.
I agree. I think it's very interesting when we think about that. African American people only make up 13. I think it's of America too, so we should classify.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
13% of America. But I feel like as you know, African American influence and in America is much stronger than 13%. If you look at hip hop, if you look at fashion, if you look at sports, if you look at all these things, it makes it seem as though it could be, I'm not going to say half and half, but just much larger than 13%.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.
And I find that wow. And I think that's a perfect segue into talking about your new song. The video that I checked out was called White Guilt. If you guys haven't checked it out, make sure you guys, you know, go on his channel and check it out. But I thought I think, of course. I think that we could have an interesting conversation about that just because we are from two different nationalities. And so what I loved about the song though was the fact that you express your perspective, and at the same time you still express the fact that you wanted justice and seek justice for George Floyd and so many others.
Yeah.
So I find that to be interesting. And so what I always say is I don't know what it feels like to be a white man in America, right? You know what I'm saying? Just as well you don't know what it feels like to be an African American woman in America, right?
Correct.
And so I could sit here and say all day that I don't put white guilt on other white people, right? But I'm interested to see, like, if how do you feel like white guilt is being put on white people, and who maybe who or what perspective is it coming from the most?
Who or what perspective? What was the last thing you said? I'm sorry.
Or maybe like who or what perspective is it coming from the most? Do you feel like it's a media thing? Do you feel like it's actually African people? Like,
no, I think the media sucks. I think the news sucks, and I think that it's. I think that most people just want to get up and do what they do for a living, and come back home and live their lives, you know, really, you know, regardless of what color somebody is, or you know, even like what their religion is, or what their, you know, sex is, or what their sexual orientation is, or whatever they call that, you know, preference. Like, I think the media likes to take whatever subject will cause a division between human beings and just force feed it down our throats. That's what I think. And I hate it. And I think definitely white guilt is one of those. I also think that there's a lot of, you know, all black people are you know, thugs and you know, on that side. I think it's a very, what's the word? Very sick system that they try to do to manipulate people to get us to fight and ignore the plans of more elites or wealthy people. And it sucks, but it's part of the world we live in. And unfortunately, me and my videographer, a good friend of mine, Scott, were just talking about this on the ride back from where we were shooting. And you know, I don't experience a ton of it personally, but it's interesting. The more I spoke on it, a couple of songs I put out, like I talked about the Nick Cannon, Eminem subject, because I had some ties to that situation, we'll just say, and I spoke on that, and the amount of like actual racist comments that came in at me like blew my mind. And it's amazing. Like when you start to speak on racism, at least as a white person, that was when I honestly really started experiencing racism, which was just very interesting to me, because it was like I was actually speaking for, like, let's just keep it equal across the board. Like, why am I not allowed? Why am I a guest? Or why am I not welcome in hip hop or whatever? And then, you know, take it to the floor right now with the George Floyd thing. It's like, why am I guilty for the actions of someone else, you know, regardless of what color they are? And it's interesting that a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, because it's been overall very loving and embracing response, but a few people have just like it's like they want to hate, you know, it's like they want to hate. And I think it's because they've been kind of programmed, like I said, from media and just being force-fed negativity. And that's how our mind works. Our mind is designed to look for negativity because it's a protective defense mechanism. And the news knows that. So the more negative they can pump down our vision, the more people are going to watch it. The more they watch it, the more advertisement dollars they get, the more influence they have with politicians and government and all these other, connections that they make. So it's a system that's set up to help a few people while at the what's the word I'm looking for? At the expense of the masses. They don't care. I really don't think most of the people that are responsible for people feeling guilty or hatred or racism or whatever don't care about white, black, Mexican, Asian. They don't care about none of that. They care about their little plans, and the rest of society just is in the way, basically.
See, I agree in the sense of, I think there's a bigger machine, you know what I'm saying, that's behind a lot of these entities that are pushing a certain agenda. Like, I agree from that perspective. I can also agree to a certain extent that the way that they push it could be used as divisive. But to play devil's advocate a little bit, I also, at the same time though, and I'm not saying I'm here for it, not here for it, but at the same time though, we have to question, like, okay, if these topics aren't discussed the way that they're discussed, is the awareness going to take place, and is the change going to take place, in the sense? And when I'm not talking about specifically about white guilt, I'm just talking about, let's say, the coverage of certain deaths, or the coverage of certain things that take place, whether it's George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. I feel like the media does have a responsibility to create an awareness about what the issues are. I think the problem comes when they choose a select few of perspectives to continue to push over and over again. Like, for me, as an African American, I feel like the Black Lives Matter movement perspective that's being given to I'm not gonna say a lot, but to some white people at least that I've encountered, has been the wrong perspective. And it's been a certain agenda that's been pushed to them of what it is that they're supposed to think about Black Lives Matter. And I think the same thing could be said as far as people on the opposing side, right, who actually want to seek justice, or maybe are feeling that the media is pushing white guilt. They're being pushed a certain perspective. So that's why, for me, that's where I feel like the media goes wrong in that sense, instead of, like you said, discussing everything. You know what I'm saying? And let people decide. Like, stick to the facts. Let's report the facts. But you can say that, and it depends on what channel you're watching, depends on what type of news you're going to receive, right? And for that, to me in itself, that's a problem. It's like, it should just be, what is the story? What's taking place? What are the facts? All right, let's let all people decide. And I find it to be very interesting, but at the same time, see, I understand your perspective of where you're coming from, but there are people who are experiencing white guilt who say that, okay, just because I don't own slaves, so what does that have to do with me as far as systematic oppression? I disagree with that. I feel like we all have a responsibility in society. I feel like, okay, just because you're white, if you're benefiting from a system, right, that has been set up, and we're not saying that everybody has it easy because you're white, absolutely not, but I feel like white privilege exists. It is not being applied every single white person. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has their own different experiences. But I feel like racism is systematically been set up to oppress African American people of color. And even more so today in 2020, I feel like it's more of a social class issue, in the sense of, people who are of a certain social class are being treated a certain way, right? And then you got the middle class, and you have the elitists. So I feel like, because we have an awareness that these things are taking place, it's all of our responsibilities to try to do what we can to change the system. So my whole thing is, just because you wasn't a slave owner, you know what I'm saying, just because you yourself is not racist, doesn't mean that you should get away with not being an active participant for change. And this is why I liked your song, was the fact that you're actively, advocating for change. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely believe that it's every individual, regardless of race, personal responsibility to leave this place better than it was when you got here.
that part. Like, I feel like that should be universal. And I feel like
Yeah.
some people are saying, just because I'm not a racist, so why do I have to do anything? And I completely,
Yeah.
I
I think a
disagree
lot
with
of people feel like, yeah, and I feel what you're saying. I think a lot of people are frustrated and don't really know what they can do. You know, they kind of feel like I'm just barely getting by myself. Like, what can I possibly do to change the world? Like, I barely make ends meet. You know, because I think the narrative has become so take one side or the other that people are feeling backed in the corners on both sides. And I think the people, for instance, they're getting the white privilege thing pointed at them or whatever. I think they're feeling like, dude, like, you, like, what do you want me to do? Like, you know, like, okay, even if I, like, someone, they say, okay, even if I agree with that, now what? Like, you know, what am I supposed to do? You know what I'm saying? You want to see my bank account? I ain't got no, you know, how am I supposed to change the world? You know what I mean? It's like, and I get it. I think it's like everybody's pissed off, and I feel like this is the world right now. Everybody's just pissed off, and everybody just wants to be heard. Nobody wants to listen. And it's kind of like, well, everybody's just going to yell and scream for a while until we get exhausted. I think that's what's going to happen. And then calmer heads are going to prevail, and there'll be some change, and there'll be probably some adjustments in the police departments. There'll be some adjustments in, hopefully, in the system, the judicial system, and everything else down the line. But you know, I think that's, as far as that specific question, I feel like as a white man, I mean, I think a lot of us are like, okay, you know, I hear you, but I don't know what I can do to fix it other than just not be a piece of shit myself. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to, and I feel like people are trying to say that. I think people get mad because it's almost as if like, oh, I have so much opportunity or so much. I can see someone maybe in my position say, oh, I'm an artist and I got a voice and I got, you know, a couple people to listen to what I say or something. Like, maybe I can, okay, cool. But the average guy who just gets up and goes to work, or average girl, whatever, they're like, what do I have? What kind of influence do I have? What change can I make? And I'm not saying there can't be, but it's like, also, it's like, it is wrong, I think, to place blame on that if they're not, because it's like they're just trying to make it in this world like everybody else. And the fact that the system was set up a certain way is not right, but at the same time, there's flaws and everything. And I truthfully, in my opinion, I think, like I was saying earlier, it starts in the home. I feel like everything's got to come back to home. And if you teach, you know, I think the biggest problem in our society across the board, regardless of gender or regardless of race, is fatherless homes. I think that's the biggest issue in our society, is fatherless homes. And I think until that is fixed, I think, because it takes two parents to raise, I mean, even with two parents, people still turn out to have problems and issues. Like, it's just, we're sending people off into an already very messed up society with a very unprepared, you know, mentality, unprepared just outlook and approach on life, and expecting that society to fix an already jacked up society. And it just perpetuates, and gets worse and worse and worse. And I think it needs to start in the home. Like, I think we need to get back to God. I think we need to get back to some of the things that this nation was really founded on. And you know, not everything that this nation was founded on is good. And I obviously am not a historian. I don't know everything about our history, but what I do know is that if we don't get back under God in this country, and we don't get fathers back in the homes, it doesn't matter how many rules that we set up for police, or how many, you know, crooked politicians we take out of office, society is still going to come.
And
I
feel like
starts in the home.
I agree with that statement. And here's what I say from one of your earlier statements: people who feel like they have nothing to feel like, how could I change?
Yeah.
I'm saying, so let me touch on
Right.
that. I feel like the number one thing that you could do right now, if you feel like, I have nothing to change, the number one thing you can do is listen, right? That's what he's talking about. We need to start listening to hear people out.
I agree.
Hear the other person's perspective. Two, be an advocate in the sense of saying something. And the other thing I say is saying something, be an advocate in the sense of voting. So voting specifically, if you want to see change, if you're like, I'm not that piece of crap, you know what I'm saying? So let's vote on policies within your own community. And we're not just talking about presidential elections, talk about local elections. Make sure that your officials that you have in your local community are aligning with the same ideals that you have. If you feel like I'm not a racist, I don't want to see African American people specifically singled out, let's start to look at our policing in your community and be like, you know what? I see that this is an issue in my area, so I'm going to make sure the next person that I vote in as a police chief, I'm going to have, some influence, because I don't want the next African American person to deal with those issues. So those are things that the everyday person can do to be, and that's regardless of money, regardless of how big and popular you are, you can do, and you can be an advocate for change. So I just wanted to put that out there. And
100% agree.
In agreement to what you're talking about fatherless homes, we're going to talk about, I agree, that is an issue. So, but as an African-American person, we could say, all right, how are we going to get rid of fatherless homes when African-American people are being targeted systematically by the mass incarceration of Black America within the prison system at a higher rate? And we already discussed that there's a lot of things that have to take place as far as our policing and targeting African-American people. But I agree. And so what I'm saying is that I think some of the issues, just to play devil's advocate again, that people are saying, all right, so why should we care about African-American people being targeted by police if there's Black on Black crime in America? Well, some people would argue and say that, well, there's Black on Black crime in America due to lack of fathers in the home, due to lack of this, lack of jobs, etc. So a lack of guidance. And I agree. I myself consider myself to be a Christian too. So I think, having God and having that element definitely needs to be reintroduced back into society, and having dads in the home. And so if we could fix those issues, you know what I'm saying, then I think that would put us all in a much better direction. I'm moving forward. We're gonna wrap it up in a second, but I do want to get back to the music. And so, like we said, if you haven't checked out that song, White Guilt, make sure you check it out. But what is next for you? What do you have coming up?
Well, real quick, song is White Sin, just so.
White Sin, I'm sorry. White Sin.
No, you're good. I just want to make sure people know. And I have actually an album, a double album that I'm putting out right now. And it's kind of a two-sided album. One is, I've been talking about this subject that we talked about, race and some of the issues for years in music, but I haven't really put anything out. And I kind of compiled this project called E-Racism. And so I'm putting that out, but because I just kind of know how I've done this long enough that I understand how people are, but I'm still the new guy, and I don't want a lot of people taking things like, oh, you're just using this subject to I don't want people thinking I'm race baiting. So basically I want to talk about the subject because I feel like it's the most relevant time to talk about it. But I have a double album that I'm just putting together and putting it out together to kind of just balance it out and give people another side of what I want to bring to the table too. So that is releasing hopefully not this Tuesday, but I think the following Tuesday I'm gonna put it on pre-order.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that. That's gonna be pretty fire. Who's your favorite person that you collaborated with?
Well, I mean, I haven't really collaborated with a lot of people, but I mean, me and Adam grew up. So Adam Calhoun, for those who don't know, we grew up together. So, we've been working with each other since we were like 19, 20. I mean, we've known each other forever. But, we've done a few songs. It's fun to work with him. And my buddy John Broadnax, got big love for him. He's a really extremely talented artist from Louisiana. Like I said, I haven't really collabed with a whole lot of people. I have an artist from where I'm from that she did a feature on my song that I'm releasing in like September or October. Her name's Kayla Bailey. her and I have known each other for a long time, and she's a phenomenal artist, singer, Christian singer, just unbelievably talented, and we always have fun doing stuff. So, but I'm looking forward to our collaboration, though. I think that'll be fun. So, yeah, I have fun with everybody I work with because I connect usually with the person first, and then kind of it grows from there. So.
Gotcha. Well, I'm so happy, you know, we got to have a very deep, in-depth conversation I think needed to be had. And then, you know, like I said, the reason why I think you're so dope is like because it's just your openness and willingness to hear both sides. And I think the fact that you're a Christian just definitely shines in your music.
Thank you.
As far as just so far, I just feel like you're just a good person, which is what, like, for me, when it comes to working with people, that's what I'm all about. I'm about working with good people, making good music. So I'm super duper excited. Make sure you guys follow him on all of his social media. You want to shout it out real quick?
Everything is Saint Mesus, Saint spelled out Saint, Mesus, Mesus. All my social media is that wherever platform you are on, that's what I'm at.
And make sure you guys follow him, check him out, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun.